So the new functionality that we're going to be talking through this morning is called serviced items. So a service item is an item that you can attach to a customer record and log work against. So for example, a service item might be a customer's bike. Whenever you do any work on that bike, the parts used and any notes that are added to the job and so forth are saved so that you can build up a service for that particular bike, and you'll know exactly which item that work has been done on when you come back to it in the future. The first thing we're going to take a look at this morning are the 3 places within the Citrus Lime system that you can create a service item, and there's 3 places that you can do this just to make everything easier for you and for your colleagues in store. So the first place where you can create a service item is in the back office. So I've got an example customer record in front of me here, and hopefully you can see that. Over on the right-hand side, after next week's release, you'll see a new tab just here as part of the customer record, which is where we store our serviced items. So we'll click into that now. So this simple table is where you can view and edit and delete serviced items within the customer record. It's quite straightforward. We just click New. This brings up the serviced item entry area. Now, as you can see, there's a star here next to description. This field is mandatory. The serial number is not, so it's completely up to you. If you want to type one in now, you can always come back and add this at a later stage if you'd like to. So I'm just going to put a description here of the customer's bike. It doesn't need to match any item lookup codes or anything like that. It's just a description that will make sense to you and to your colleagues. So I'm going to just say that this customer has got a Defy Advanced bike. I'm not going to add a serial number at this stage. Then we click Update. So we can clearly see the customer's serviced item has been added here. Had we added a serial number, that would appear in this box. We can see the date that the item was first created. We'll come back later in the webinar and just have a quick mention about what happens with this last serviced option here. From this drop-down menu, again, we'll come back to this a little bit later on, this is where we would then be able to view all of the jobs against this particular bike. So that's the first place that you can create a serviced item. You can actually do it within the back office itself. The second place that you can create a serviced item in the Citrus Lime system is when you're in the till creating the workshop job for the customer. So we're going to pop over to the till and have a little look at that now. So here we are in the till setup. So I'm going to set this customer and I'm going to create a workshop job for him. We could enter some comment text above as usual. Now here we can see a new drop-down menu is now part of the system where we can choose the serviced item that we're going to be working on as part of this job. Now we have 2 options here. We can either choose the Defy bike that we just created in the back office. Alternatively, we could actually create a new serviced item at this point. This is really helpful if the customer's bringing in a new item to the workshop. You don't have to go back to the back office. You can actually create it against their record while you're in this screen. So for example, if we type in a track bike, it then gives us the option to add this as a new serviced item against the customer's record. A pop-up appears, just giving us the opportunity to make any changes. Again, don't worry if there was an error at this point. You could always pop back into the back office and make any necessary changes. But for now, I'm happy with this, so I just click Create. When we jump back into this customer's record later in the webinar, I'll be able to show you that now this bike and the previous Defy bike are now in his list. You could enter your reference details here. I'm just going to put some placeholder text in myself for the purposes of this morning. I'm going to tick to say that the customer's bringing this item into me at the moment, set my due date, and we're ready to go. So I'm just going to add a labour item to this order. And set my price, for example, £50. Okay, so we're ready to create this workshop job for Mr. Robertson, our example customer. Okay, so that's the second place that you can create serviced items, actually when creating the workshop job in the till screen. The third and final place where you can create a new service item against a customer record is actually within the workshop. So this will be really useful for your mechanics if a job comes through to the workshop, is against a particular serviced item, but that's not yet been set in the point of sale. That's not a problem at all. They can do it themselves. So we're going to jump over now into the workshop module and have a look at how that works. Okay, so here we are in the workshop module. I'm just going to refresh the workshop. And here we can see Mr. Robertson's awaiting job. The serviced item now appears in this unscheduled job preview section. You can see that in these previous jobs, which were created before the serviced item functionality became available through the platform, the serviced item is just set as none. It's still absolutely fine to create workshop jobs for your customers without serviced items. That's not a problem at all. You'll just see this none value represented here. But for Mr. Robertson, we do have the serviced item, the Trek Marlin 5 that we put in previously. I'm going to schedule this for tomorrow morning. So if we click on the job and go to edit, this is the third place where we can create or change the serviced item for the job. Now we set the Trek Marlin bike in the workshop module. However, we could switch to the Defy Advanced bike that we created in the back office. Alternatively, we could go through that process again and we could create a new serviced item for Mr. Robertson at this point. If the workshop job didn't have an item set at the point of creation in the till, again, you could just add it in here, so that's not a problem at all. Right, I'm just going to complete through the process to complete this workshop job. With the new serviced item functionality, when you create a job with a serviced item present, you'll see this pop up. It asks you whether or not you'd like to update the last service date against the item, and this is that other column in the table in the back office that we saw before. So we'll pop back in a moment and have a look at how that affects things. You can click no at this point. All of the work will still be stored against the serviced item. It's just that that date won't update. So we'll pop back and have a look at how that turns out in the back office in a moment. For the purposes of this example, I'm going to say yes, this was an actual service on the bike, so I'd like to update the last service date. As usual, at this point, our customer communications pop-up appears just to make life easier for us if we want to send an email or a text to the customer to let them know that their work is completed and ready to be collected from the store. Okay, so we're back to the main workshop module screen. We can now see our tick to show that this job has been completed. So far then, we've had a look at the three areas where we can create the new serviced items against the customer. We've looked at the back office, we've looked at adding the service item in the till, and we've looked at how we can actually add it once we're within the job itself in the workshop module. What we're going to do now is just pop back and have a look how this service item reports across different parts of the Citrus Lime system. So we're going to jump back into the back office. So if we have a look at the service items tab, I'm just going to refresh this actually. Oh, it's brought it through. Super, it's brought it through for us. So as we can see, we've got the Defy Advanced bike that we built originally in the back office, but now we've also got the Trek bike, which we added in the point of sale. We can see that since we've created that workshop job, because we clicked yes, update the last service date, that date's now filled in for us here. That is a really good feature because it enables your staff just to have a really quick overview of when the bike was last serviced from this table here without drilling down into the further information. So if we chosen no, all the work would still be there, but this date wouldn't have updated. If we now drop down from the Trek bike, we can see the details of the job that was completed. It's not closed at the moment because it hasn't been tendered, but we can see that the workshop job has been complete. I just put in some placeholder text into my order comments, but obviously that would appear here. And again, I use some placeholder text, but the order reference would appear here. So we're going to take a quick look at the A4 workshop tag now. And we can see here that the serviced item is also now part of the workshop tag reporting. We can see quite clearly that it's the Trek bike that the work has been done against. So again, this is really handy for your records. You know exactly what all of this work was completed for. Just jump back a second. Okay. If we now tender this job in the till, I can show you where the A4 receipt for the order also displays the detail of the serviced item. So we're just going to have a look in the till. So I'm going to recall the order for Mr. Robertson. We can see the labour. Again, we've still got all of our comment text and so forth, just as we usually would. And we're going to pay this £50. Okay, if we preview the A4 receipt, if you look in the top right here, underneath where you have your transaction number, cashier number, and any comments, as usual, we've now got the addition of a line here, which tells us which item this job was completed for. This is really useful for your customer. Obviously, you've always got access to that A4 workshop tag, and we saw that around this area just a moment ago. But this means that the A4 receipt you're actually providing to your customer has a record for them. So once they're back at home, they can remind themselves exactly when the last service was completed on this particular bike. Right, I'm just going to jump back into the back office for 2 seconds. So there's just a couple of last things that I'd like to highlight to you as part of this webinar. Obviously, we've looked at the flexibility when it comes to creating serviced items, either in the back office, when creating the workshop job in the till, or once actually editing and building the job within the workshop module. We've looked so far at how it's recorded across the system. We've seen how the reporting comes out in this table here with the option to update the last service date. We've also had a look at how the serviced item is reported on the A4 workshop tab and on the customer's receipt. The last few things I want to point out are, at the moment, there's absolutely no limit to the number of serviced items that you can attach to a customer's record. Obviously, in the case of bikes, it's not likely that a customer would have hundreds of items, but at the moment, there's no limit set to the number of items that you can attach to an individual customer record. Another thing to point out is that we will be adding a cloud report for serviced items in future. That will allow you to see all of the serviced items across all of your customers and their last service dates. This could be really useful to you for reaching out to those customers who haven't had their bikes serviced or other items for a period of time, recommending that they come into store and therefore easily generating repeat business for yourself. So look out for that cloud report coming as part of a future release. The final thing that I want to point out is that one of my colleagues has written a very comprehensive article explaining everything I've just run through in the webinar, how to create the items, where it's visible on the A4 workshop tag and on the receipts for the customer, and answering a few further questions. So we'll send you around a link to that article. Please do feel free to refer back to it. Again, if you've got any questions at all about serviced items, you can type those into the Q&A for this webinar now. Alternatively, we're always available on the help desk if you've got any questions, and we'll get back to you on those as soon as we can. Okay, I'd like to thank you again for joining us this morning. This has obviously been a bit of a first for us, doing a webinar on some new functionality. Please do give us any feedback you've got, as we think it might be a useful feature for our customers going forwards. I hope that's given you a good overview of the new functionality in next week's release. And as I said before, if you've got any questions, please do come back to us in the coming days or weeks. Thank you very much for joining us.